Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello everyone and welcome to another interview for the Idea to Value podcast. Very happy to have Tendayi Viki with us today. He's a strategy and innovation consultant and recently published his most recent book, The Corporate Startup, which is all about lean innovation, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Tendayi, it's wonderful having you with us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So for people who don't know you, can you give us a bit of a background as to how you got started in innovation?
Okay, so I spent 10, 12 years as an academic actually teaching psychology at the University of Kent. I was teaching research methods and organizational behavior. And then I was really lucky to get a fellowship to go work at Stanford University in Silicon Valley. And just spending time in that environment is where I really caught the innovation bug. I used to attend Steve Blank's classes and sit in the back and just kind of like absorb all of that. And so coming back from that is when I started. Well, I kind of made a switch and started doing work on creativity, innovation, and then I started advising startups, and then eventually stumbled onto the question of how large companies can do this, just from people asking me the question, asking me to come into their companies to help with something. Yeah.
And let us know a bit more about what you do nowadays.
So nowadays I spend most of my time arguing with middle managers. I spend most of my time in large companies, trying to provide some guidance, some consultancy, some advisory, some training on how they can take lean innovation, lean startup design thinking, and agile methodologies and bring them into their organization in such a way that they then don't stifle the same practices as they're trying to implement them.
And that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's this concept of lean innovation, which a lot of people have heard about sort of vaguely on Forbes and Harvard Business and a lot of the business-focused websites, but a lot of people probably don't know exactly what lean innovation is. So in your view, what is lean innovation?
So in my view, lean innovation is about ensuring that product teams, people that are working on innovation products, are really just doing the right things at the right time, right? One of the main practices that's been around forever is the notion that you can just kind of create your product in a vacuum by yourself with your team with a big budget and then launch it at scale. This is difficult for startups to do because they can never find money, but when they do find money, they tend to also sometimes do that. But within large companies where resources are available and they don't have to talk to customers, it's even more endemic. People just put in their proposal, get their $2 million, go in a corner with their team, build their product, and only after they launch it do they find out that nobody wants it. And so lean innovation is really about making sure that people are doing the right things at the right time, asking the right questions at the right time. And it's really about stopping this notion that we call premature scaling, which is launching a product before you know who wants it, what the right business model is, what the right price point is, etc.
Is this lean concept similar to the lean which was pioneered by Toyota?
So it's kind of a stack of ideas, right, that have kind of been put together. So, the lean manufacturing principles that were pioneered by Toyota, the design thinking principles that were pioneered by IDEO, agile methodologies, is kind of all kind of been put into this mix. And what we find is that those methodologies put together, provide a nice rhythm for innovation teams and product teams to use to kind of manage their way to success. Because what we're saying is don't build your product start to finish. What we're saying is build your product iteratively using customer feedback. And at the same time, you also have to find a sustainably profitable business model for that product before you launch it. And you also have to find the business model iteratively by running experiments and testing channels and price points, etc. And so these methodologies allow people to be able to do that in a rigorous and systematic way.
Now, I work in innovation, you work in innovation. One thing that I'm sure we both deal with, and that you mentioned at the beginning, is the difficulty you have with management and organizational issues to do with innovation. In your experience, when you're trying to get this concept of lean innovation within a company, what are the main hurdles that companies are facing to implement these strategies?
Right. So what's interesting about the lean startup methodologies, right, is that they kind of come into like prominence over the last like decade or so when startups are really trying to figure out how to become much more successful. So they figure this rhythm that, you can ask a hierarchy of questions, can it be done? Is this technically feasible? Should it be done? Is this something that people want? How should it be done? Should it be done right now? Can it be done profitably? Can it scale, right? These are all fundamental questions that startups ask. But startups don't ask these questions in a business plan. They ask these questions by running experiments, right? They test whether things can be done. They test whether they can be done profitably. In the meantime, in a large organization, the practice is to write a 30-page business plan answering these questions. Can it be done? Should it be done? How should it be done? Can it be done profitably? It's a spreadsheet with 5-year projections that say by year 10 you're going to be making 20 million or whatever, right? So the rhythm with which large companies work and the rhythm with which good, successful innovation teams work is opposite. So I run workshops. The management is like, please train our team on how to do innovation, how to do business model design and run experiments. So that you train the team, and then they leave the workshop, they're fired up, they get back to work, and the first thing they get asked is to write the business plan. Or the first thing they get asked is to deliver on budget and on time, as was proposed in the strategy planning document in January. And so organizations are constantly stifling the practices that they want their teams to kind of work. And Clayton Christensen says that organizational capabilities, like how the company runs itself, is much more powerful than human capabilities, which are the skills that people have.
So how do companies actually address this problem? How do you build these organizational capabilities to enable lean innovation?
Right. So let's say, for example, so one of the things I try to get people to do is to agree what innovation really is, right? Because there's also a bit of myth making out there in the world about what innovation really is. Some people will think about innovation in terms of like writing business plans and executing on the plan. And some people will think of innovation as the visionary. If I had a penny for every time I've had Steve Jobs thrown in my face, right? It's like Steve Jobs never ran experiments. And so a lot of people think about innovation as this visionary thing. But actually, what we like to do from a lean innovation perspective is define innovation as the combination of really, really clever visionary ideas with sustainably profitable business models. So when we say sustainably profitable business models, what we mean is that the team has created something that people really like, but has also figured out a way to deliver that value in a way that's profitable. Right? So in Steve Blank's words, what teams should be doing is searching for sustainably profitable business models. So if a team is searching for a sustainably profitable business model, how do you manage a team that's searching? Because it's easy to manage a team that's executing to plan. You bring them in and you say, are you on plan? Are you on time? Are you on budget? Are we going to launch on the scheduled date? Et cetera, et cetera. But a team that's searching, they're going to go out and find out that what they thought was wrong, and they're going to have to iterate and pivot. So how do you manage that? What is the rhythm for that? So what we've been trying to do with some of the work that I've done with some large companies, for example, I've done some work with Pearson, the large publishing company, with some great colleagues there, Sonia Krasajevich and Craig Strong. We've done some really great work. We developed what's called the Lean Product Lifecycle, which is a methodology for a large company to release money incrementally. Rather than release the investment to an innovation team in large $2 million budgets, why don't you invest it incrementally in the same rhythm as the questions that they're trying to answer? So don't fund people to build products before they've answered the question of who wants it, what is the need, what is the customer job to be done, right? So why don't you invest the money incrementally? Invest in searching for the customer need and problem. Invest in searching for the right solution. Invest in searching for the right business model. And when you have all those pieces together, then invest in scaling. And so this incremental investing is a way for companies to double down on things that work. And if the project fails, it's not that things don't fail. Things will fail, but if the project fails, you know early and you know cheaply, right, before you've actually built and launched.
Are you suggesting then that you take some of the other agile development methodologies around building things like minimum viable products as early as possible to actually go and test it with people, rather than just asking them in focus groups about whether or not they like the idea?
Exactly. So what we're saying is, what we're saying in large companies is we're advising innovation teams to work in this way. We're saying that, don't put people in focus groups and ask them whether or not your idea is great, because there's so much social desirability in those situations with social pressure. People will tell you anything. Why don't you go out there and launch minimum viable versions of your product and test real behavior? Will people buy? Will people click? Will people download? Will people use? Will people even take up a free trial, right? If people won't take up a free trial, then you know that your value proposition is not really resonating. Now, in order to run those experiments, you need an organizational investment management methodology that invests in experiments and is able to stop, start, pivot, iterate, right? And you need a management that's comfortable with that process.
Taking it to the next level then, assuming you're not a small startup that's basically focusing on one product or one idea at a time, most of these large corporations, they've got a lot of things happening simultaneously. And is there a way that you can use these lean innovation ideals to help manage multiple ideas at the same time?
Right. So that's a fantastic question, and that's the great distinction between large companies and startups. So prior to some of the work that I've been doing over the last couple of years, startups were generally defined as, from the lean startup perspective, were defined as temporary organizations that are searching for a sustainable business model, and large companies were defined as companies that have found their business model and are now executing on it. But actually, the definition of startups is correct, but the definition of large companies is only partially correct. Large companies are surely executing on their current core products, but at the same time, they have to be thinking about what they're going to be doing in the future. So actually, for me, management 101 is the ambidextrous management. It's the ambidextrous CEO. It's the ambidextrous organization that has got one leg in what it's doing right now and making sure that executing is going well, and the other leg in exploring the future, because the world is changing so much. And so what I tend to propose is that companies should have a balanced portfolio. So rather than think of themselves as a single organization with a monolithic business model, they should think of themselves as a portfolio, an ecosystem of products that will be at different points in their journey. Some of them will be core products that are in the markets making money. Connected to that may be adjacencies, taking our current products to new markets or making improvements to those products for current markets. And then there'll be the crazy place, the transformational innovations, new products for new markets, right? And if you look at your portfolio and you're an organization and you don't have that balance, right, then you know that you're kind of living in the present, but you're not truly investing in the future. And so we try and encourage companies to think about how they can have a portfolio approach to how they manage their product.
Does this portfolio approach also feed into the way that resources and budget are released for these various projects?
Exactly. So my favorite framework is the Innovation Ambition Matrix by Nagy and Tuff. And what they recommend is like a magic formula. You don't have to do this exactly, but they go 70% of resources should be allocated to managing the core, 20% of resources should be allocated to managing adjacencies, and 10% of resources should be allocated to managing transformational. Right? So that's like the budget allocation process, if you want to call it that. But then underneath that budget allocation process is another layer of understanding, which is that the way we manage the core product is slightly different. Maybe not even that slightly different. It's actually quite different from the way we manage the development of transformational innovation. So that 10%, right, if you ask people to write a business plan before you release that 10%, you'll invest in let's say, for example, the 10% is 10 million. You will invest in 5 products for 2 million each. But if you're releasing the funding incrementally, it allows you to make many more bets before you find products that actually work. And so we say yes, you go 70-20-10, but then as you manage the innovation, just make sure that you're also doing that using incremental methodologies and innovation accounting methodologies that ask the right questions at the right time and invest the appropriate amount of money given the risk on the table and what the teams currently know.
I'm sure what a manager or especially the CFO would challenge you with then is, let's take these 10 million theoretical dollars dedicated to the transformational projects. You say that for this company, a standard transformational project is going to cost $2 million. So for these $10 million, you can have 5 projects. If you're suggesting you can make many more bets, then that means that theoretically you're going to need, if you're doing 20 new projects, you're going to need, oh, my mental math isn't really helping right now, but you need $40 million.
40 million, right, right.
So how do you fit more projects within that same $10 million budget?
Okay, so here's an interesting thought, right? And it's from a great book, by the way. It's called Originals by Adam Grant. And it's kind of based on the quote by Linus Pauling, which is, the best way to have good ideas is to have loads of ideas. So if you make one large investment in an idea, the reason why large companies will not let innovators fail is because they make large investments in one idea. If I give you $2 million, you can't fail. You have to deliver on time and on budget. But what we're saying is, don't invest $2 million, invest 5,000, 10,000, 12,000, because 20,000, 25,000, because you're doing it incrementally. So let's say, for example, a team comes to you and goes, we have this really great idea about remote car washes. I'm just making that up. Then you go, okay, fantastic, remote car washes. What problem does that solve? Well, customers don't want to leave their houses before their cars are washed. Okay, fantastic. Can you just confirm that that's a real need and people will pay for that need, right? Now, to confirm that that's a real need and people will pay for that need, you don't need to build the remote car wash, right? There's ways and methodologies that allow you to learn that cost $2,000. So the CFO releases $2,000 from that $10 million, and then the team comes back and goes, actually nobody cares about this, and the project stops for $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, depending on the complexity of what's being researched and how difficult it is to do the research. And so that 10 million can buy you more punts at the table before you double down on those things that have more chances to succeed. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fundamental thing about the way that creativity works is that not all ideas are good ideas. And a lot of companies make that mistake. They think that once they've decided on an idea, yes, they need to see it through to completion for it to be successful. But with this way of being more adaptable and running experiments and prototyping with innovation, you can really run a lot more smaller things in parallel and see which ones then can be prioritized compared to each other. One might be showing some small signs of possibility, whereas another one came completely unexpected out of nowhere, but there seems to be a demand that no one saw before and could be really successful.
Exactly, and what we're saying is that, you increase the chances of success by running more experiments on more things. And what that does is also within the company, it democratizes access to innovation. It means that more and more people can participate because they all get a chance to test their ideas. And if they don't work, then we'll test more ideas next week. That's kind of the way you do it. But it's also important for CFOs, because this is really important from a financial perspective. We're not giving people money to play. Right? It's not play money. It's not money that goes in an innovation lab so people can buy Post-it notes and football tables. Right? This is money to go and find things out about the market. This is money to go and test real products and test real business models with the ultimate goal that through this process, 10%, 20% of those things will become sustainably profitable in the future.
And it's one of the main things I'm going to take away from this. It's this concept of sort of incremental innovation. You mentioned an innovation lab, and I just want to talk about that briefly, even though we're coming up to the end of the interview now.
Right.
One of the reasons I got in touch with you is because you've been writing quite a lot recently on Forbes, and one of your most popular articles was called something along the lines of "Why Your Manager Was Right to Kill Your Innovation Lab." And I'm sure someone who deals with innovation all day, that's a very controversial thing to say. So what did you mean by that?
So one of the things that so in a lot of innovation labs, companies have been, because of the lean startup movement, right? Companies have been launching innovation labs to great fanfare. Bring the press. Here's our new innovation lab. Here's our great innovator. He's a former entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera. And then after a while, the innovation lab gets quietly closed with no fanfare. You just hear Yahoo have closed Brick House. This and this company have closed this. And the reason is because the innovation labs themselves, after 3 to 4 to 5 years, haven't really produced anything that's actually succeeded in the market. And so one of the first reasons I say is that your boss closed your lab because it wasn't really an innovation lab. It was a place for you and your friends to hang out with Post-it notes and football tables and make cool stuff. And making cool stuff is not the same thing as innovation. Innovation is the combination of creative ideas and sustainably profitable business models. And so the cool stuffs lab is not the same thing as an innovation lab, right? And so this is fundamentally important. And then we have to think about why companies set up innovation labs in the first place. They want to make a strategic play to preserve their survival in the future. So what happens if you're in the lab and everything you're working on is not aligned to the company strategy? Right? Even if you find something that's going to work, there's no manager in the company that's going to take it to scale, right? And so this whole thing that there's no such thing as a bad idea. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. Bad ideas are ideas that are not strategically aligned to the company's goals. And so I go on and on and on and on about the practices of these innovation labs and how they're not really testing business models or running experiments, et cetera, et cetera. And that's in the end when the innovation lab doesn't produce anything but cool stuff that's got no business model value, it's more likely to run into trouble.
And in that case, the manager actually has a justification of why it's shutting down.
Yeah, well, I mean, so for me, I sit in this place when I'm doing my work. I sit in this place where there's a tension between the creatives who just want to be left alone to get on with it, and the MBAs who want to make sure that whatever is being invested in makes money. And this tension is unreasonable because the creatives are talking about having a vision and executing on their vision and forgetting about all these crazy, stodgy MBAs, right? And that's crazy because that can result in waste. It is the tyranny of the visionary innovator who works on their vision. And everybody's talking about Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, but nobody's talking about that Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg are actually the 3-4 people that rose, but underneath them are thousands of visionaries that are buried in the graveyard because their projects failed. Nobody talks about that, right? And then the MBA, on the other hand, is scared of those thousands of visionaries that died in the graveyard because that's money gone. They want to know up front whether or not the project is going to work. So they force you to write a five-page business plan as if that's going to help, right? And so the question is, how do these two things dance together? And the process of incremental investment allows the MBA to give you resources to play if you want to, but at the same time you're accountable for producing the answers that will allow the MBA to release more resources to you. And so everybody gets a chance to do what they like to do, but then it's also fundamentally rooted in creating business value.
Perfect. I mean, that's a perfect way to finish off the interview, I think. It's been wonderful speaking with you, and if people want to find out more about you and the work that you do and your book, where can they go to find out more?
Just go on my website, www.tendayiviki.com.
Okay. Tendayi, it's been wonderful speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Today's episode was made possible by members of our premium Deep Creativity Training Program. For less than the price of half a candy bar per day, you too can get world-exclusive daily exercises which push your creativity past its comfort barrier to make you better able to generate ideas in all aspects of your life and work. Invest in yourself now by going to www.ideatovalue.com/deepcreativity and using coupon code PODCAST for 25% off your first order. And don't forget that if you found this episode interesting, to like and share it, and to leave us a review in your favorite podcast player. See you again in the next episode.